If you're serious about lowering your insulin levels and your blood sugar levels, here are the practical tips that you'll start implementing today. Hey Wellness Warrior, I'm Dr. Nick Zyrowski, and if you have belly fat when you look down or you look at yourself in the mirror, then there's a good chance you have a certain level of insulin resistance and also high blood sugar. Now the good news is whether you fall into the type 2 diabetes realm or you fall into the kind of just pushing that pre-diabetic realm or you're just trying to lose weight, these are the exact things that you'll do in order to lower your insulin, which will help you get into the fat burning zone and also lower your blood sugar. So here's what we're going to start with, and this is exercise. Exercise is very important for a couple reasons when it comes to lowering your insulin and blood sugar levels. First of all, if we have more muscle on our body, then we are able to actually suck up that sugar within the blood, and that muscle will act like a sponge after a meal in order to help you get that sugar out of the blood. So here's the thing, the more muscle you have, the better off you'll be at lowering your levels of blood sugar and insulin resistance. And also, metabolically, your metabolism is going to function better if you have more muscle on your body. So we want to make sure that we have as much muscle as possible. And so if you're somebody who has no muscle tone at all and you're trying to get your blood sugar under control, that's a good thing to think about, is start building some muscle. Now, another thing you can do from the standpoint of exercise is high intensity exercising. So this would be like HIIT training, for instance. Now, one of the things I'll have the different type 2 diabetic people that I work with do in the form of exercise in order to help keep their blood sugar down and start pushing it down throughout the day. And we're talking, some people are pretty severe in the realm of type 2 diabetes. What I'll do is I'll have them exercise up to 3 times a day, and what we'll do is a 5-minute high-intensity interval training workout. So you wake up in the morning, boom, 5 minutes of HIIT. Around noon, boom, 5 minutes of HIIT, and then before bed, 5 minutes of high-intensity interval training. Of course, if we can combine this with some weight training throughout the day, perfect, right? Because we want to build muscle. However, if you do these short bursts of high intensity exercise, it really helps drive your blood sugar down in a huge way. So this is where exercise can come in handy. Now, as far as some HIIT training ideas, well, it doesn't have to be real complicated. One of the things I'll have people do is some air squats. Do as many as you can in the course of a minute. And then you can do some push-ups. And then you can do some jumping jacks. So basically you can switch it up and be creative, but it doesn't mean you have to go to a gym 3 different times a day. It just simply means you get yourself in an area where you can do a quick 5-minute burst of exercise. It gets your heart rate up, gets your muscles working real quick, and it drives your blood sugar down fast. So those are some tips you can use in the way of exercise. Now let's move on to apple cider vinegar, because apple cider vinegar has actually been shown to do a couple really good things in the way of lowering your blood sugar. For one, it's going to slow stomach emptying, so that's going to help keep your blood sugar a little bit lower. Also, if you consume apple cider vinegar prior to a meal, it helps drive down blood sugar, or even in a fasted state. And so when we look at the research, it shows that if you consume 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and you'd of course want to dilute that down with some water. If you consume that 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, it works good at lowering blood sugar. It supports weight loss. It supports reversing insulin resistance. I like to actually sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon into my apple cider vinegar. Hey, apple, cinnamon, it's 2 of my favorite things. Put those together and it's a good cocktail in order to help drive down your blood sugar. And you can do this 2 times a day before a meal, especially if you think that the meal is going to drive your blood sugar up. I personally like to do it fasted on an empty stomach in the morning. So you can, of course, use this any way you like, but that's my preference. Now let's talk about diet, but before we do, did you know that the food that your body burns for energy will be the predetermining factor in whether or not you have poor metabolic health? If you're always burning carbs for energy instead of fat, this over time leads to insulin resistance. But how would you know what your body is using as a fuel source? Well, I have the answer for you. Over the past few months, I've been using a tool called Lumen. This at-home tracking device allows me to tell in real time whether I'm burning fat or carbs for energy simply by breathing into it. Using Lumen, I'm able to track how my diet or exercise affects how my metabolism is functioning. I personally like using Lumen to monitor when my body switches to using fat for energy while I'm intermittent fasting. Now, I don't often promote devices like this, but I love using Lumen to see how metabolically flexible I am, and I think you will too. Lumen is truly a gold standard metabolic tracker and is actually validated by research, which is why I like to recommend it to my patients or anyone who's looking to measurably improve their health. The best part is that I've worked out a deal for you guys, and you'll be able to receive $50 off your Lumen metabolic tracking device by using code Dr. Nick. Click on the link below to save $50 on your Lumen today. You know, back in the day, I actually used to have a keto tracker, a ketone tracker. So I would poke the end of my finger, put blood on it, check my ketone levels. And then I would have a blood sugar tracker next to that, poke another finger, get some blood, and then check my blood sugar levels. And the cool thing about Lumen is you don't have to do either of those. You just breathe into it and it tells you like, hey, you're burning fat for energy or you're burning sugar for energy. So really cool thing, and stops you from having to poke your fingers all the time. I remember having really sore fingertips for a long time. As we look at your diet, we talked about how to measure whether or not you're burning fat or sugar for energy. But in general, when we're looking at your diet, here's the three main changes you need to make. You need to cut out sugar. You should look at every single label, and especially if you're trying to lose weight, drop your blood sugar, or lower insulin resistance, you have to make sure that you are cutting all sugar out. This is where it becomes a little tricky, because sometimes I talk about this and people get very confused. They're like, hey, I'm healthy. Why are you telling me I have to go to 100% sugar-free? Well, you don't have to go to 100% sugar-free diet unless you are somebody who's really trying to make these metabolic improvements of getting your blood sugar under control. So what would I do in this case? I would cut out all big fruits, all high sugar fruits. I would go and cut out carbs. I would also make sure that any carbs I did eat were going to be more on the nutrient dense side of things. We're talking about like maybe a sweet potato, we're talking about squash, maybe beans, things like that that are actually carbohydrates, but healthy carbs, not white pasta or white bread or bagels or any of that kind of stuff. We want to get rid of that. Now, the other thing that we can do in order to really promote a good healthy diet is make sure that we are focusing on prioritizing protein. If you get enough protein in, it will really help stave off all the hunger. One of the big problems when people try to start eating healthy, they really move towards the greens end of the spectrum. I'm going to eat salads, I'm going to eat a lot of veggies and cruciferous vegetables, all great. But what happens is you tend to forget your proteins. And if you don't have your proteins in, then what you'll find is that you'll have a lot of cravings, and this is not good. Those cravings lead you to wanting carbs. So we have to make sure that we're getting a lot of protein in. The number that I would use in order to get proper protein is I would go 0.8 times my ideal body weight. So 0.8 times, if let's say you're 180 pounds right now, but your ideal body weight's 150, so you go 0.8 times 150. That's how much protein that you should consume on average. And if you really start getting these things in line, boom, you're gonna really find yourself in a good place. You can go and you can change your exercise, change your diet up, start using some apple cider vinegar. You can use devices like Lumen to determine if you're burning fat for energy or sugar for energy. And that's an important concept, because remember, if you're burning fat for energy, you're going to be in a healing place with insulin resistance, but if you're burning sugar for energy, you're not. So you want to be eating those fats, eating those proteins, eating those veggies, and making sure that you're doing the things to put your body into a state that it actually starts burning the fat for energy. And then as you continue to do that, your metabolism will be healthier, and you'll continue to drive your blood sugar down. And you'll be able to receive $50 off your Lumen metabolic tracking device by using code Dr. Nick. Click on the link below to save $50 on your Lumen today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this one, I think you'll really like this one next.